When we think of Golden Age Hollywood, we imagine elegance, charm, and endless glamour. Red carpets glowing beneath studio lights, stars smiling from behind the shimmering veil of perfection. But behind that glittering illusion, many of those same stars lived brief lives marked by secrecy, suffering, and immense personal cost. Autopsy reports and death certificates, cold, clinical documents, strip away the makeup and mystique. They reveal not the legends we saw on screen, but the fragile, hurting people beneath the lights. Today, we'll explore those haunting pages, the final records of the biggest names of old Hollywood, and uncover the sad truths that fame could never hide, that if this kind of story touches your heart, if you're someone who cares about truth, responsibility, and speaking up for the voiceless, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with someone who should hear it. Let's get started. 1. Marilyn Monroe, a lonely end behind locked doors. No story captures the tragedy of Hollywood quite like Marilyn Monroe's. She was the ultimate symbol of beauty and allure, yet also one of the most misunderstood women in entertainment history. Her autopsy report, filed in August 1962, lists the cause of death as acute barbiturate poisoning. But what makes it so haunting isn't just the drugs, it's the loneliness. The toxicology noted the level of pentobarbital in her blood was lethal, but her stomach was empty. That simple detail, no trace of swallowed pills, ignited endless theories about whether Marilyn's death was truly a suicide or something far darker. Her house was silent when investigators arrived. A phone clutched in her hand, the window sealed, her body found face down on the bed. Around her, the remnants of a life that burned too bright, unfinished scripts, scattered pills, and a framed photograph of Joe DiMaggio. Forensic notes observed bruising along her arms, consistent with previous injections, and a body weakened by years of insomnia and dependency. Behind the glamour, her body told a different story of exhaustion, emotional isolation, and a desperate search for peace. 2. Rudolph Valentino, the first Hollywood idol's final agony. Before there was Clark Gable or Cary Grant, there was Rudolph Valentino, the Latin lover who redefined male beauty on screen. His death in 1926 shocked the world. The Autopsy reported peritonitis following surgery for a perforated gastric ulcer, but deeper examination revealed that Valentino suffered immensely in his final hours. The medical notes described the infection spreading through his abdomen, his fever spiking as his organs failed. Nurses wrote that fans surrounded the hospital, weeping outside his window, unaware of the agony inside. Doctors tried a new silver nitrate treatment, experimental at the time, but it failed. He was just 31. When his body was displayed for viewing, more than 100,000 mourners passed his casket. The autopsy confirmed what fame had long concealed. Valentino's body was frail, malnourished, and ravaged by stress and exhaustion. His death certificate became a symbol of early Hollywood's obsession with beauty at any cost, a body treated as spectacle even in death. 3. Judy Garland, the weight of a studio's expectations. Judy Garland's autopsy reads like a biography of abuse. Barbiturate intoxication, the report said in 1969. But within that phrase lies decades of cruelty from studio handlers. From her teenage years, MGM executives controlled every calorie she ate and every pill she swallowed. To keep her thin and energetic, she was prescribed amphetamines to wake up and barbiturates to sleep. By the time she died at just 47, her liver was enlarged, her veins scarred. The autopsy notes how her heart showed early signs of failure, a result of years of malnutrition and stress. The coroner remarked that while her death was unintentional, her body bore the clear marks of exhaustion. Her death certificate listed her occupation simply as actress. But to those who knew her story, Judy was far more. A woman who carried the crushing weight of a studio system that turned innocence into an industry and dreams into dependency. 4. Jean Harlow, the blonde bombshell who faded too soon. Jean Harlow's death certificate, dated June 1937, lists uremia, kidney failure. At 26, she was the face of MGM and adored by millions. But her autopsy revealed a terrible truth. Her organs were shutting down long before her death, and she had been misdiagnosed for weeks. Studio, doctors thought she had the flu. In reality, her kidneys were failing, likely due to a combination of scarlet fever from childhood and overuse of peroxide hair bleach that damaged her scalp and bloodstream. As her body swelled and her speech slurred, filming continued. Crew members remembered her collapsing on set during Saratoga. Just days later, she was gone. Her autopsy showed extreme water retention and a body overwhelmed with toxins. The studio spun the story into one of quiet dignity, but the autopsy told a crueler story. That even in her final days, Hollywood expected her to keep smiling through unbearable pain. 5. Montgomery Clift, a face broken inside and out. Montgomery Clift's death certificate says coronary occlusion, but the truth, written between the lines of his autopsy, reveals years of torment. After a near-fatal car crash in 1956, his beautiful face was shattered, his nose broken, jaw dislocated, teeth destroyed. He underwent reconstructive surgery, but never emotionally recovered. Toxicology reports following his 1966 death found traces of barbiturates, alcohol, and painkillers. But the coroner emphasized that his heart simply gave out, the result of years of self-abuse, depression, and chronic pain. Friends said his apartment was found meticulously organized, as though he'd known the end was coming. His body bore scars, both surgical and emotional, the marks of a man trapped between his own reflection and a world that only valued his beauty. 6. Carol Landis, the forgotten star with an unanswered letter. Carol Landis' autopsy from July 1948 lists barbiturate overdose. She was 29, vibrant, and poised for a comeback. But the saddest detail came from the coroner's report. When police entered her home, they found a letter addressed to Rex Harrison, her married lover, still sealed, on her nightstand. Toxicology showed massive doses of seconal, yet her death certificate listed probable suicide, leaving a small trace of uncertainty. Her friends told investigators she'd been optimistic the day before, planning lunch and a movie. But the coroner's notes mention evidence of emotional distress, and photographs from the scene showed her clutching a rosary. It was a private cry from a public woman, one that Hollywood quickly buried beneath silence. 7. George Reeves, Superman's final mystery. When police found George Reeves, the actor who played Superman in the 1950s, he was lying on his bed, a single bullet wound to the head, the gun at his side. The autopsy confirmed gunshot wound head, self-inflicted. But here again, the documents raise more questions than they answer. His fingerprints were not found on the weapon. Powder burns were minimal. Guests were in the house, yet none heard a clear gunshot. His death certificate reads suicide, but to this day, many suspect foul play linked to powerful Hollywood figures and Reeves' affair with the wife of an MGM executive. The autopsy, stripped of myth, left a single haunting sentence in its notes: no defensive wounds observed, no external evidence of struggle. Sometimes the saddest thing about these reports isn't what they confirm, it's what they leave unsaid. 8. Lupe Velez, the Mexican Spitfire's tragic final act. Lupe Velez was known for her fiery energy and unapologetic humor, but her autopsy revealed a far darker end than tabloids imagined. She died in 1944, officially of seconal poisoning. According to the death certificate, she was 4 months pregnant and unmarried, a scandal by the standards of the time. She reportedly wanted to stage a beautiful departure, dressed in silk, surrounded by candles. But the coroner's report described something tragic and undignified. She became ill after swallowing the pills and died alone on the bathroom floor. Hollywood gossips mocked her death for years, but the autopsy stripped away that cruelty. It told the story of a woman cornered by shame in an unforgiving industry that punished women for being imperfectly human. 9. Natalie Wood, A-star lost to the water. Natalie Wood's death certificate reads drowning and other undetermined factors. The Autopsy from November 1981 reveals bruises on her arms, legs, and neck, injuries inconsistent with a simple fall into the water. Her body was found floating near Catalina Island, wearing a nightgown, socks, and a down jacket. The coroner couldn't determine whether those bruises were from an accident or from an altercation aboard her husband's yacht. For decades, the mystery deepened. Witnesses described shouting before she disappeared. In 2012, the case was reopened, and the cause of death was reclassified as drowning and other undetermined factors. The clinical language of her autopsy conceals a lifelong pattern of fear. Fear of water, fear of failure, fear of what Hollywood demanded of its women. Her final moments remain a mystery, but her autopsy gave the first and only voice to the truth her fame had long silenced. 10. Dorothy Dandridge, Hollywood's Broken Promise. Dorothy Dandridge's death certificate, filed in 1965, lists emboli from a fractured foot, a blood clot that reached her lungs. But toxicology also found traces of antidepressants. Her death, like her life, was shaped by the barriers of her time. She had become the first black woman nominated for an Oscar, yet Hollywood gave her few roles afterward. Financially ruined and isolated, she turned to prescription sedatives to cope. The coroner noted malnutrition and signs of anemia, evidence of a woman whose dreams had been starved by an industry unwilling to sustain her brilliance. Her autopsy, devoid of glamour, stands as a quiet indictment of a system that celebrated her beauty but ignored her humanity. Across all these documents, the crisp medical language and stamped signatures, one pattern emerges: the human body as the ultimate record keeper. Each star's autopsy tells the same underlying truth, that behind every red carpet photograph was exhaustion, addiction, emotional manipulation, and physical strain. The studio system demanded perpetual perfection. Pills were prescribed to wake up, to perform, to sleep, to hide pain. In the 1930s through the 1950s, studios employed private doctors whose job wasn't to heal, but to keep production running. Marilyn Monroe's file referenced a studio physician. Judy Garland's records mentioned long-term amphetamine use at employer recommendation. For many of these stars, the very system that created them also destroyed them. Their deaths were categorized in neat boxes: barbiturate poisoning, peritonitis, heart failure. But what those autopsies really captured was the cost of dehumanization.